Hey everyone, today we'll be exploring August Wilson's use of blues music to reflect the individual struggle of an African American during the 1950s. I chose to explore this aspect of fences because music has always held a great importance in my life. As a small child, my grandmother would sing to me, and not only would I hear her beautiful voice, but I also heard deeply hidden pain and suffering within her melodies. In my experience, music has been a way of communicating the incommunicatable. Though I could never experience the same struggles of racial discrimination and poverty my grandmother had endured, her melancholy tunes and heartfelt lullabies brought me closer to seeing the world through her eyes. When we think of blues, we think of misfortune, betrayal, and regret. We think of pretty much anything full of sadness and self-pity. However, blues isn't just what's about getting you down in the moment. Blues is about overcoming hard luck, saying what you feel, ridding yourself of frustration. As Ralph Ellison once said, the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of brutal experience in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain and to transcend it, not by the consolation of philosophy, but by squeezing from it near tragic, near comic lyricism. Blues music was first documented in the late 19th century. Its creators were slaves, freed slaves, and descendants of slaves. During the 19th century, slaves were newly emancipated and went through the transition from slavery to sharecropping and small-scale agricultural production in the South. The creators of blues music were these African Americans forced into sharecropping and agricultural production. Unsatisfied with the South's economic opportunities and harsh segregation laws, including the Jim Crow laws, they headed north to take advantage of the need for industrial workers. With the increase in population of black communities across the North, these migrant workers were forced to deal with poor working conditions and forced to compete with racism and prejudice in order to find living space for themselves. We see these aspects of struggle within the Maxon family when Troy describes life living with his father gathering cotton for Mr. Lubin, his life with Rose and Corey living in a house down an alley, and racial discrimination in occupation and sports. Troy is the anti-hero of fences, and most of the play is centered around him and his mistakes. August Wilson also chooses to focus on Rose's struggles as an African American woman in the 1950s. In order to depict these struggles, Wilson hides little hints of Rose's struggles within religious gospel. When Rose sings to herself, "Jesus be a fence all around me," Wilson reveals Rose's internal turmoil with her family and society. "Jesus be a fence all around me every day. Jesus, I want you to protect me as I travel on my way. Jesus be a fence all around me every day." The first thing that stands out to me when reading this song is that Rose repeats Jesus as if to call out to her Lord, like she's singing a prayer to get the attention of her God. She then repeats fence to conjure a sense of protection and safety from all the evils of the world. The fence is an obstacle, separating herself from all the things out to get her. With this, I start to wonder, what does Rose need protection from? The first thing that came to my mind was the moment when Bono confesses to Troy that he knows Troy is cheating on Rose. Bono says, "Some people build fences to keep people out, and other people build fences to keep people in. Rose wants to hold on to you all. She loves you." Bono tells Troy this because he knows that Troy's infidelity will harm Rose. Troy's infidelity represents the evils of society that Rose does not want to enter her home. Bono makes a deal with Troy using the fence as a symbol of maintaining Troy's relationship with Rose, but at the same time, Bono acknowledges Rose's struggle as Troy's wife. As a woman, she is vulnerable. She is vulnerable to her husband's infidelity because while her husband has the freedom to leave his family, she is financially reliant on Troy, living on his paycheck. And she has accepted this fate. When she finds out Troy cheated on her, Rose argues, "Don't you think I ever wanted other things? Don't you think I had dreams and hopes? You was my husband, I owed you everything I had." Rose admits she has sacrificed so much for her family, and she has come to terms with her place in the world. Unlike Troy, she accepts the responsibilities of being a mother and a loyal wife. So when she pleads to Jesus, "I want you to protect me as I travel on my way," Rose calls out to her Lord for strength on her journey as a wife and a mother, because she knows as a woman she has no other choice but to stay put with her unloyal husband. Rose confesses to Troy, "I planted a seed and watched and prayed over it. I planted myself inside you and waited to bloom. And it didn't take no 18 years to find out the soil was hard and rocky and it was never gonna bloom." In conclusion, Rose calls out to Jesus not only to protect her from harm, but to give her strength in tough times. Thus, Wilson uses blues to show Rose's way of coping with struggles as a woman. Additionally, August Wilson gives insight into Troy's struggles as a father and husband during the 1950s. Using the song Mr. Engineer, Wilson reveals Troy's fear of being rejected, estranged, homeless, and disrespected. When Troy brings his daughter home to Rose, Rose rejects Troy and he resorts to sitting on the porch. On the porch, he starts to sing, "Please, Mr. Engineer, let a man ride the line. Please, Mr. Engineer, let a man ride the line. I ain't got no ticket to ride the blinds." It's very obvious that Troy is trying to evoke sympathy from Rose. However, on a deeper level, we can see that through this song, Troy reveals some of his biggest fears. One aspect of blues music that we must consider here is that often freed or escaped slaves would sing about trains, tracks, and roads. When fleeing the South to gain freedom in the North, slaves thought that transportation embodied hope and even life itself. In addition, the idea of flight signified danger because attempts at escaping were always at the mercy of ending in capture or death. The time when Troy is depicted fleeing is when Troy runs away from his father. At a young age, Troy has had to endure an early end to childhood and a traumatic relationship with his father. Troy reinforces this when he recounts, "The only thing I knew was the time had come for me to leave my daddy's house." Although Troy's childhood home was destroyed, his escape from his father's tyranny presented hope and a new life. Now shifting to his new family with Rose and Corey, Troy expresses his fear of becoming homeless. He also expresses his disappointment in himself that he has to rely on Gabriel's pension to live. If it wasn't for Gabriel, he wouldn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. When Troy sings, "I ain't got no ticket to ride the blinds," Troy reveals he feels like he doesn't have control over his own life and has to ask favors from Mr. Engineer. This is similar to Troy's dependence on Gabriel. In addition to feeling a lack of control and estranged from his home, Troy fears being disrespected. The first instance we see Troy wants respect is when he argues with Rose which market he should buy from. He argues he'd rather pay more for respect than get food for cheaper. Later in the play, Troy struggles to bend Corey to his will. When Rose and Corey no longer acknowledge him as part of the household, Troy realizes how far he has fallen. He says, "I'm coming in and everybody's going out." When Troy sings, "I ain't got no ticket to ride the blinds," Troy realizes he doesn't have a ticket with Rose and Corey anymore, and he desperately wants to get on the train to getting love from Rose and Corey back. Thus, through blues music, Wilson reveals Troy's fear of being left behind, being kicked out of his home, and being rejected. The last and most common song that is seen in Fences is Old Blue. Most of the play, Troy is seen singing the song, but the last time this song is heard, it's sung by Corey and Ronell, mourning Troy's death. Wilson uses this song to reveal Corey's struggle with putting his conflicts with his father to rest. Corey starts off the song, "Hear it ring, had an old dog, his name was Blue, you know Blue was mighty true," and so on. As mentioned earlier in the play, Old Blue was Troy's childhood dog. Loyal to Troy, Blue licked Troy's wounds after being beat by his father. When Troy speaks of running away from home, he talks about how Blue was there for him. When the world suddenly got big, Blue was near him. However, when Troy runs away and finds his new home 200 miles away, Troy can only sing about Old Blue because he's gone. Troy speaks of Blue like a symbol of the past. This song honors Old Blue with a golden chain, meaning that Old Blue is precious to Troy. When they sing "I Know Blue Treated Possum" in Noah's Ark, Blue's memory holds a lasting impression in the minds of Troy's family. Since Blue is a symbol of Troy's past, Blue represents Troy's early into childhood as buried with a golden chain, and therefore memorable. The song also represents Corey's early ended relationship with his father. In the song, Old Blue is depicted as loyal and hardworking. Corey would not agree that Troy was a loyal husband, however he accepts that his father tried his best. Like Rose said, "I do know he meant more good than he meant to do harm." When Old Blue dies in the song, Corey's relationship, like Troy's childhood, ends. Corey and Ronell sing Old Blue before Troy's funeral to celebrate his life by singing his song. Although Corey could never agree with Troy's actions and decisions, he admits that Troy will always have a place in his heart. Through blues music, Wilson reveals Corey's sadness in his father's passing as well as his complicated past with Troy. Wilson used blues music in Fences to represent the internal struggle of Rose, Troy, and Corey. Although they all have different struggles, they all share a similar desire to be worth something. Rose commits to her relationship with Troy, Troy asserts his power over Corey, and Corey reflects on his conflicts with his father. Thank you.